Nothing is wrong. The room is quiet. The day moved on without friction. And still there's a pull inside the chest. Not sharp, not urgent. Just enough to distract you from whatever you were doing. Your thoughts drift backward, not to a mistake, to a moment that felt unfinished. A pause in someone's voice, a look that lingered half a second too long. A message that ended sooner than expected. Your body reacts before the mind finds words. A subtle tightening, a sense that something needs attention. But there's nothing to point to. No scene to replay it clearly. Just a feeling that you might have missed something important. You sit with it. You don't panic. You don't even name it. It's familiar. But that's not the part most people notice. What they notice is how quickly you smooth things over. How easily you apologize. How you check in just in case. They see thoughtfulness, care, sensitivity. They don't see the way stillness makes you uneasy. Because stillness leaves room, and room lets the question surface. Did I do something wrong? Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. Like a whisper you've learned to answer without asking where it came from. You replay interactions, not searching for conflict, but for imbalance. A tone that shifted, a warmth that cooled slightly. You wonder if you should have said less or more. Or something different altogether, but that's not the part most people notice. They assume guilt follows action, that it's a response to error. This guilt arrives without a trigger. It doesn't wait for proof. It shows up when someone else is distant, when energy changes without explanation, when connection feels thinner than it did before, and there's a particular weight to that kind of guilt. Because it doesn't accuse you of doing harm. It suggests you failed to prevent it. You don't talk about this. There's no clean language for it. You just carry it, adjust around it. You become careful, not tense. Careful. Careful with words. Careful with timing. Careful not to disturb whatever fragile balance you sense around you. But that's not the part most people notice. They see someone who adapts easily, who reads the room, who knows when to speak and when to stay quiet. They don't feel the cost of that awareness. Because awareness, when it never rests, turns into responsibility. And responsibility, when it's unchosen, turns into guilt. You feel it when nothing happens. That's what makes it confusing. You expect guilt after conflict, after sharp words, after mistakes. This guilt shows up in calm moments, in neutral spaces. It asks you to scan for threats that aren't there. You might notice how your body leans forward emotionally, even when your posture stays relaxed. How part of you is always listening for something unsaid. That part rarely gets to rest. But that's not the part most people notice. They think guilt is about morality, about values. This feels older than that, deeper. It feels like an obligation you don't remember agreeing to. You reassure others quickly. You soften edges instinctively. You offer explanations before they're requested, not because you're afraid of conflict, because something inside you equates smoothness with safety. There's something quieter happening underneath all of this. Something that doesn't announce itself. Something that's been there long enough to feel like part of you. You might notice how hard it is to sit with someone else's discomfort without feeling responsible for it. How silence pulls at you, even when you logically know it's not yours to fix. The body doesn't follow logic here. It follows memory. But that's not the part most people notice. They praise your understanding, your patience, your ability to hold space. They don't see the subtle exhaustion that comes with always being emotionally available. This guilt doesn't crash in. It seeps. It settles into small moments. A delay in response, a change in rhythm. And it asks the same quiet question again and again. What did I miss? Not what happened. Not what they did. What didn't I catch in time? You may tell yourself you're overthinking, that it's nothing. Sometimes it is. But the feeling doesn't leave just because you dismiss it, because it's not trying to solve a problem. It's trying to prevent one. That's where it starts to feel heavier. Because prevention has no finish line. You can always scan more closely, care more deeply, adjust more precisely. And guilt becomes the signal that keeps you vigilant. But that's not the part most people notice. They don't notice how your attention turns inward the moment someone else turns away. How you fill the gap with self-questioning. This guilt isn't loud enough to interrupt your life. It just hums underneath it, a low frequency that never fully fades. You might feel it strongest when you're alone, when there's nothing external demanding your focus. That's when the mind circles back. Did I misunderstand something? Did I assume too much? Did I not do enough? And there's a strange irony in it. You're deeply attuned to others, yet the guilt pulls you away from yourself. But that's not the part most people notice. They think being tuned in is a gift, and it can be. They don't see how it can turn inward and become self-blame. There's something important here that rarely gets named. This guilt didn't start as guilt. It started as awareness, an awareness that learned slowly. That connection required maintenance. That closeness depended on noticing shifts early, not because someone told you this directly, because experience taught you that distance hurt. And the safest response was to prevent it. That's where it starts to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough to be felt. The realization comes quietly. The guilt you feel isn't about having done something wrong. It's about feeling responsible for how others feel, not consciously, reflexively. Your system learned that awareness meant duty. That sensing discomfort meant you were somehow involved in it. So when someone withdraws, even slightly, the guilt steps in, not as punishment, as a reminder to pay attention. It doesn't accuse, it alerts. It says something shifted, something might be at risk. And over time, that alert became indistinguishable from fault. You didn't choose this. It formed when emotional closeness mattered, when being tuned and helped you stay connected, but the context changed. The pattern didn't. So now the guilt shows up in moments that don't require it, when silence is neutral, when distance is ordinary. But the body still reacts as if something precious might be lost. That understanding doesn't erase the feeling, it reframes it. The guilt becomes less of a verdict, more of a signal from a part of you that learned to keep watch. That part doesn't know the difference between past and present. It just knows how to protect connection the only way it learned how. But that's not the part most people notice. They assume awareness means responsibility. This awareness is sensitivity without boundaries. Once you see that, something loosens, not completely, just slightly. The guilt still arises, but it doesn't immediately pull you into self-judgment. There's a pause, a moment where you recognize the pattern, you feel the familiar weight, and instead of chasing its cause, you sit with it. You notice that nothing actually happened, no harm, no rupture, just a shift you sensed. And sensing isn't the same as causing. That distinction matters. It doesn't fix anything. It softens the grip. The guilt loses some of its authority. It becomes something you feel, not something you obey. The body slowly learns that awareness can exist without obligation. That noticing doesn't always require action. That closeness doesn't always need management. The pacing slows. You stop scanning as urgently. You let moments pass without filling them. Not out of detachment, out of trust. Trust that not every silence is a threat. Not every distance is a failure. And the guilt, sensing it's no longer in charge, quiets a little. It doesn't disappear. It rests like a guard finally allowed to sit down. The room feels steadier, not brighter, not lighter, just steadier. There's no resolution here, no ending that ties everything up, just an understanding that settles gently, that the guilt was never proof of wrongdoing. It was proof of how deeply you learned to care. And for now, recognizing that is enough.